I did have somebody, I have some questions that I might talk about. So I told them that I would try to do that this time. The first thing then I have a theme that I want to talk about also, and it kind of covers one of the last part of the things that he or she requested. I really didn't pay attention. So the first question was central air versus window units and mini splits. Okay. So it's actually the least expensive way to air conditioning, to provide air conditioning is a window unit. And there's two reasons. One is the low cost to put in. And you can put it in each room if you want, and then effectively it's zone air conditioning. And that each person can set the temperature that they want in their room. It's still going to be cheaper than, it's going to be cheaper cost, it's going to be cheaper purchase, and cheaper install. Now, when it comes to heat, there are ways to beat heat that is inside of a window unit. That would be a vent-free heater that is propane or natural gas that's mounted to a wall. And I have that in, I think, every rental that I have a vent-free heater. The reason is, in the wintertime, so whatever storm or tree falls because of wind or just ice causes power to fail, or even a brownout, which we don't really experience, I don't think, in this area, but I know it happens elsewhere. When those brownouts fail, even if you have central heat in there that is natural gas or propane, they have a safety feature in it where it's called a heat limit switch. So when that heat inside the exchanger inside of it gets a certain temperature too hot, it shuts down the gas regulator and you lose your heat. So that would mean that in an emergency, the vent-free heater which is mounted on the wall, if it's propane, you'll still be going. If it's natural gas, I guess Texas found out that you could actually have natural gas shut down. A vent-free heater on the wall is going to keep you warm despite any kind of power failure. And the cost of it for a big one is around $200. Having it, installed might cost you more, but because you have to have your fuel line to it. And from that point, if you want to push out heat to rooms that don't have that heater close to it, you can use a fan and that's what I encourage. But if times are bad, you can still have heat even though you have no electricity. At one point, we had a we had a on-demand gas propane water heater. So not only did we have heat, we had hot water. So, it's something to consider when it comes to heat. A vent-free wall-mounted heater, or even a stationary one that sits like a fireplace. Those don't have any real danger. They have had oxygen depletion sensors in them since, I think, 76 or something like that. Anybody can correct me if they know better, but they've had no problems with people dying. Now, the old radiators and things like that, those things were using the oxygen in the room, and so you could that's why the old timers in the big cities would go and crack the window, the old habit of cracking the window, because you don't want to suffocate. So now I'm going to say that the most efficient dollar for dollar cost is a vent-free wall-mounted heater. So now we've talked about window unit and then heat. The next, the least expensive next is the wall-mounted heater or the propane or natural gas heater.
I think he's also asking about air.
Yes. So then after the window units, the next inexpensive thing would be the mini splits. And they can start around $500. If you look around, you can find some for $500-$600. There are some disadvantages with a mini split. They actually do have a fill kit that you can buy for the Freon. Otherwise, you've got to hire somebody to do your electrical, if you can't do that yourself, And if you can't do your fill kit, can't find one, then you have to hire somebody to put the Freon in after your lines are, your setup is installed. The disadvantages to a mini split, it does not get to every room, except it's sort of like the vent-free heater or the little air conditioner or window unit. It only deals with that room. Again, you can do certain things to push out heat that it might put out. They are almost always heat pumps. Effectively, heat pumps can't really compete or can't really put out enough heat when the temperature outside drops to 30. So if you can supplement it and it can help circulate it more, that's something you can consider. Now, in regular central heat units, your gas units have become way more efficient as time has passed, whereas electric basically is it's the same efficiency as it has ever been. Very little difference. There's a lot of electronics now, and the cost for a central heat unit now can be somewhere between $7,000 and $12,000, and maybe even more if you have a big house. Whereas a mini split can be somewhere between $500 and $5,000, and then whatever it costs to have it installed. But a $5,000 mini split is one with 4 heads, and that should include the cost of install. But so what we're talking about is somewhere between $200 and $900 for a window unit, maybe even $1,000. $200 to $900 for a window unit for air conditioning, $500 to $5,000 for a mini split, and somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 for essential heat and air. There is another couple of other ways to get heat and air, and that one would be a self-contained unit on the outside of the house, and then blowing through ductwork through the rest of the house. So now all those rooms you can close down vents, but basically they're all controlled the same temperature by a thermostat. So keep in mind that if you have a heat pump, unless it has heat strips in it, it's affecting, and that's what they do. So if it gets below 30 degrees outside, heat strips kick in, and now that efficiency that you were hunting for when you purchased a heat pump is not efficient anymore. It's electric heat, which is very expensive for its use. I see a lot of people using package units or the whole complete air conditioning and heat system, whether natural gas or electric heat, package unit outside. They do it, and what I've been told by the people who have done it is that they can just buy a unit. They don't have to hire an air conditioner. They can just unbolt one and bolt in another, change the ductwork to fit, hook up to gas and electric. They can hire somebody to do that real cheap. It's not the same as, so like the amount of profit that is being made is ridiculous when it comes to air conditioning and heat for a central unit. The reason I say that is I think you should be able to get a 3-ton unit, a 3-ton unit central heat and air, a split system for $3,500, $3,000. And what we talk about, they start around $7,000 per install, and that's already got the ductwork there. So $3,500 in less than a day's worth of work, $3,500 a day, minus, let's say you spend $1,000 in labor. The company's making $2,500 a day, probably do 2 installs in a day, so you're looking at $5,000 a day a company would be making. That's outrageous amount of profit for just a crew of 2 people and maybe an office manager. That's 20 days time, and that's on the cheap side. There are those that charge $12,000 or more for essential heat. So the reasons that this is something to think about is that you can replace the window unit even with heat strips yourself. You don't have to hire somebody to do that. Or even if you hired somebody to do it, it wouldn't cost very much. The mini split, again, it could be cheaper to replace it. Now, second one I was wanting to mention for is air conditioning, and you don't see it as much anywhere but in the west and the southwest, and that is swamp boxes. And there's yet another one, but it's not. It's probably the most expensive so far. So that the swamp boxes takes water and goes through, and it blows air over it. It can be very, very efficient because basically you just have some water and you have electricity pushing the fan. That's very, very inexpensive. And that works really good where you don't have a whole lot of humidity because that's going to kick out humidity. And it's really neat. I like it. I don't have that. I have one of those swamp boxes. I think actually have two of them, but they're not a complete. I got them because of the fans. It was something that was inexpensive. It really works well for blowing air over you if you're really hot in the summertime and you're working outside. So that's one way to think. Also, the last one is geothermal heat and air conditioning. So that is putting lines in the ground, usually 10 feet deep or so, so that 50-something degrees in the ground, 54 or something like that at a certain depth, cools those lines, and then the lines come in and you blow air over those lines. I'm making it sound simple, but it's actually quite expensive to install, to have people to dig. I mean, if you do it yourself, it's not. And you can do these, you can use it in your home. You can use it in your greenhouses and things like that. Overall, that's probably the second cheapest as far as air conditioning, and maybe the second cheapest as far as heat. The cheapest would be the natural gas or propane vent-free heater that's mounted on the wall or standing on its own. And the cheapest would be a swamp box, say, if you have the area that you can use it. So those are your choices. The most expensive is your central heat and air, and then you're paying a lot of money to have that installed. As a matter of fact, my son is working as an air conditioning tech on a big business, and he's in a mall outside of in Bellevue, just outside of Seattle. And he talks about that air conditioning guys can't even install the split system because technically they're not supposed to handle electricity, not even the micro electricity, because you have to have electrical license for that. So not only would you be an air conditioning person, you would have to have an electrician. Now imagine how expensive that would be. So there you go.
I know you've got a thought process going, but I've got a question.
All right.
Hi, I wonder what a 16 by 74 shingle roof would cost with labor on a mobile home 17-year-old roof.
Let me see my phone. I have numbers in there. That's just doing nothing but getting higher. So you're going to have it. I should have it before I go speaking out of turn to compare, although I'm usually quite confident. I don't do shingles. I know how to repair them. I know how to install them. There's generally lots of people that will install shingles way cheaper, and I just don't see there's profit in it, but you have to have to do it legally. You have to have a lot of insurance. It's something like 60% of whatever it is you charge. Shingle tear-off double layer is around $1.35 per square foot.
And we've got 16 by 74.
So just to tear off, and usually after you have two layers on, so that tells you that if you have one layer on, you can do a second layer. But after two, they want you to take it off, and it costs at least $1.35 per square foot. So 16 by 70, you said? 16 by 74. And then to install the shingle, I don't know if I have that on here, because I just don't do it. It's quite expensive. A shocking expense to me. It's like $7,000. I would guess. If they don't have to take the shingles off, they have to take the shingles off. You're at another $1,200, $1,300. So you could be at anywhere from, I'd say, $5,000 all the way to $9,000, depending on who's doing it. And it's so hard to keep up with how fast the prices are going up for people who do labor. And roofing is brutal. I would put it shingle roofing at the same level as, or maybe just a little easier than doing concrete work, depending on the concrete work. I mean, they do it no matter what. I mean, you can't do it with the snow coming down. You can't do it with the rain coming down. I mean, you shouldn't. I believe me, I've seen people do some pretty, so, it's,
You said 5,000 to 9,000,
so it's
6 to 7 without taking the shingles off.
$4 per square foot. It really depends too on what kind of shingle you get. So, anywhere from $4 to $8 a square foot. And then you're talking about 74 times 16. Yeah, 1,184 times 4 is 4,736.
Do these numbers translate elsewhere, or is this just like where we are?
No, that's I looked it up on Google and that's what it's. I mean, it can be way higher in bigger towns. It can be a lot higher if you're near shingle damage areas like tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that in Florida and central Oklahoma. The pathways for tornadoes are now going further up, going into Chicago. The reason it's getting higher is because they're having to do it more and more in emergency situations. So that pushes the prices. And as soon as the roofing contractors get used to charging, it's sort of like the air conditioning people that I was talking about. They got a lot of nerve to be charging that much. As soon as they figure out that they can charge that much for shingles, that's what they're going to do. And the more they get used to doing it, the higher the prices get. And the further along they go, they end up having to pay for repairs done to drywall inside because somebody didn't do the shingles quite right. The longer they're in business, the higher they get. And so that price is pushing, not just because of inflation, but also because shortages of labor. And I'm going to harp on that. I'm telling you, our birth rate's way off. So people doing this kind of work is just less and less people in the world, and less people that want to work that hard. And since the 60s and 70s, we've been telling kids, need to go to college. So now, I think it was a guy named Kevin Samuels. I was watching him talking to somebody, and he was talking that women try to find that guy that makes $100,000 a year or more, and makes him a high sought after man. They don't want to date the contractor. He's the one that's making more money than the people with Bentley, and he's driving a truck. That is because there are less people doing the work. So this price. So if you were talking when I said $4 a square foot, and at $8 a square foot for that same project would be $9,472, and that is not taking off the shingles. That would be another $1,700, $2,000. So you could be $10,000 easy if they had no conscience, and depending on the area. That's why and then people get. Even metal roofing contractors get surprised because you can actually do metal roofing quicker and do a better job if you do it right. Same with shingles, way cheaper than shingles. I'm telling you.
And last longer.
It will last longer. There is no such roof as a roof with no maintenance. And a lot of people think that shingle roofs are better because I didn't have to replace anything until it was time to replace all my roofing. But whenever they go in to replace all the roofing, guess what they're doing? They're finding out damage around the vents that weren't maintained and say, hey, there's some plywood we're going to have to replace, so you're going to have to pay for that too. So yes, you're paying for the maintenance, you're just paying for it at the end of it all. That's usually when you call them and say, hey, I got a roof leak. Oh yeah, your shingles are old. And whenever they give you an estimate, then you get a surprise. Sort of like when you go to the dentist to get, with insurance, and he goes, oh, by the way, your insurance didn't cover it all, here's some more. So you're going to get that extra kick when it comes to the billing. So that's something to keep in mind. The insurance on roofing is pretty powerful. I mean, the workman's comp on that, and the liability also is just as high. I think gangsters used to sell insurance. Hey, you better pay us or something bad's going to happen to your store way back in the day. Guess what? You got insurance for your store to, just to have insurance because somebody might get hurt or they might do damage to your house, and those guys got to cover it all. So it's really high. I personally think that a metal roof is the only way to go, but I've had people straight up tell me I have nothing but bad times with, I've never had a metal roof that didn't leak. I've had a couple of metal roofs leak, mostly no, but the ones that did leak were oddball situations. And I just got through working on one. It was a rubber roofed, double wide mobile home. They use it for doing temporary offices, and this was converted into a house. Well, when I end up tidying up and closing up all the inside of the house, and then the mini splits were put in on both ends, and a vent-free heater was installed for emergencies. When all that was done, the house kept really warm. And all that heat stayed in the house instead of going out through where the windows were inefficient. Now they are. It stayed in the house, and the house got really warm. And this is the first time I'd ever seen this, but a rubber roof got hotter than the metal on the outside, causes condensation run down the metal roof until it finds a screw or the seal. In this case, it was using a masonite siding to hold the rubber roof on the outside edges. So it run in behind the strip of masonite holding that rubber roofing and just rot out the wall all the way down. And it would start leaking, run the water inside the roof on the ceiling, hit the plastic that's supposed to be like a vapor barrier, and the plastic would run sometimes all the way across, causing stains where the roof didn't leak the first year. And I didn't install that roof. Somebody else did. And as far as I thought they did a good job, but that black rubber got hot and stayed hotter than the metal, caused condensation underneath the metal. So how did I fix that? First, I thought it was the ridge cap foam was a problem. Then I found that didn't fix it. It slowed it down, but it didn't fix it. So I ended up putting what you call double bubble insulation, which is like an R9 rated 1/4 inch 3/8 thick insulation. I put that underneath it. It's foil face on both sides underneath it, and it has not leaked since. That's one that I had. The most common leaks that I've had is lack of maintenance. There's screws that can be tightened after about 4 or 5 years. And there are generally 1 or 2, if not 5 or 6, vents that go through the roof. Plumbing vent, those kind of things. And they actually have to be maintained. So everything requires maintenance. Relationships require maintenance. Everything requires maintenance. There's just less of it. And how long does a metal roof last to shingles? The best shingles out there are going to be around 30 years, and that's prorated. You can still have problems way earlier than 30 years. You just get a warranty based on what's left, sort of like with your battery. If your battery goes bad, it's a 5-year battery, and you had 1 year left on that out of 4. You used 4 and you had 1 year left. You're only going to get the cost of the battery that 1 year left out of, so 20% of it. It's the same with shingles. It does not cover the cost of the install of those shingles, which is the most expensive part. It just covers the cost of the shingles and whatever percentage is left of that warranty. Whereas a metal roof, most of your decent metal roof, it's really, you have to actually request to get the low warranty metal, and you're saving less than 50 cents a square foot trying to save that kind of money. And then usually the person who does that is somebody's trying to save money and not tell the customer. So now I'm going to tell you that most of your warranties are around 40 years. That's for color. And I don't know if you know, but barns have had tin roofs on them for 100 years. I suggest that you may have to paint that metal roof at some point as part of your maintenance, but you probably won't have to replace it. I've been around metal roofs now for 30 years. I've not seen one that rusted through. I've had a lot of these people talk about, what is it? That if you don't put the slip sheet underneath, which is a paper that they've come up with, or, to provide protection from the shingles touching the backside of the metal roof, that will cause the metal roof to leak. Well, 30 years ago, I did metal roofs and had no problem. So what I'm saying, after this long-winded way, talking about shingles, is that metal roof is far superior.
The way you do metal roofs, have you ever seen condensation issues
Yes.
with your method?
With my method? Well, I had to learn when I first started. If I ever, I will, try to say I've never had an issue saying the wrong thing to a woman. Believe me, I have made mistakes. I just don't make them over and over again. Not now. Whenever you have any kind of distance between the metal and where the main part of the roof is, say if you're stripping it with wood, I have learned for 20 years now that you need to insulate it with. Now I use a double bubble. Back in the day, when you stripped it with a 2x or 1x, I would put cut foam in between, and that made it better. It actually was stronger too, because you could stand on it and not worry about it crinkling or anything in between the 16-inch center or 24-inch center wood that you fastened to. But I have learned now, which I had not ever done a metal roof over a rubber roof, that I suggest you put that double bubble insulation. So my method? No, I don't have problems with condensation. The one problem I have had peak up here and there is that the roof vents that they make, or vents that they have for a bathroom, it sits on a shingle roof on a mobile home particularly, or double wide usually. It sits on there in a sort of flat way because it's longer than a single wide. As single wide is like 8 feet on both sides, and a double wide is 16, let's say. So what happens is, being this lower, the storm will come in, a really heavy storm. It'll hit that metal and bounce up inside that vent, and then drop down and drop water through the vent. Sometimes it doesn't drop the way you think it will, because that vent's not always directly above where it has a cover on the inside of the bathroom. They got a flexible ductwork that runs over, and so it might build up inside that vent that has some little hole in it, which this is something I've experienced, and then leak down through. So these are the kind of experiences I've had, not condensation problems. I've not ever had. Way back in the day, say 20 years ago, I had a guy. I used to tell people, we need to do insulation, but I had a guy. He was a nice guy. I said, hey, I'm going to put insulation. I kind of put it up as a question. You want me to put insulation on it? And he goes, no. How much does it save me if I don't? So back then I was doing foam. I said, well, it saved you about $300. Oh yeah, let's not do that. Well, when I had built the addition onto that house, it never stopped leaking through there. It took me forever to figure out with my simple head.
The same guy who asked you about condensation said, thank you, you have inspired me to try in on my old single wide with a curved roof.
Yes, and an old single wide mobile home with a rounded roof. I used to take metal stud and build a peaked roof and over it, and actually extend it out over and make a soffit and fascia. Boy, it was never as expensive as other people, because I've seen people do it with wood, make a wood peak over. I've seen them where they build a barn over their mobile home and actually request that's what they wanted, because my friends not ever had a problem with the roof leaking ever again. When I just now that I know better, I was like, no, I'm not. You can get somebody else to do that, because I don't want to be tied to it. Think about doing the job wrong or more expensive. After you're done and you leave and go down the road, those people will never call you up to complain. They're just going to tell everybody they know that you did a bad job. It cost them a ton of money, and it still is a problem. So that's the silent advertising that you don't want. What you want is the good advertising that people will, talk, hey man, I found my favorite mechanic. This is who I go to. That's what you want. You don't want the one, man, whatever you do, I'm going to go to that guy. You know, I paid it. He did do the job, but man, he charged me a lot, or it didn't work very long. So when building a roof over or a barn over a mobile home, it's not practical. You end up having to do weird things to build siding onto that to make it look like more like a home, and that's usually my goal when it comes to mobile homes, to make it more like a conventional home. So yeah, I mean, the rounded roof that I've been doing now for about 15 years that way, it's been really surprising, and it's really helped out a lot of people on a budget. You know, you don't really care what the roof of your mobile home looks like. You want it to be better, and you would like it to be a solid color, but you don't care if it's peaked. So rounded roof, and I kind of fell into that, and it has its unique roof rumble problems. Whereas also, and it goes down the road too. I've had roofs that I've done go down the road 70 mile an hour, and they held up just fine. So yeah, more power to you, man. And I'm glad to be of help. And wouldn't it be great if everybody helped each other, shared their knowledge? It would be a great place. Anyway, this other person asked about Cool Seal versus a metal roof. Cool Seal, I don't use Cool Seal, and Cool Seal there's nothing wrong with Cool Seal, it's just not very pretty. It's gray, and it has oil in it, and you stir it up until when you get it and you open it up, it has to be stirred up because it'll just look black and soupy looking. So you stir it up and the gray starts coming up, and you stir it up until it's consistently one color gray, light gray. And then when you put it on, it gets thicker toward the bottom because the material's down the bottom. That's what it's all about, how much you stir it up and how good a job you do. Putting it on is a real hassle. The reason I say that is if you're not careful, that thin coating of Cool Seal has oil in it. It'll go down the siding and ruin the siding. It'll get on paint and ruin the paint. That oil base on it causes grief. That's why I went to the elastomeric white stuff that they have now. The white stuff, I don't rely on it totally to cover larger cracks, so I fill in the large cracks with tar, and then I go over it with elastomeric. So around the vents, around the edges, and I've got videos on how I do that. But yes, Cool Seal and elastomeric are about the same cost, around $100 a 5-gallon bucket. And I think you're going to end up spending money to get a brush for sure, maybe two if you got somebody helping you. You're going to buy some tar to fill in the larger cracks around your vents and around the outside edges. So look at $12 for a bottle, $15 for a can of tar, maybe $200 in materials, and then 5 hours of labor. So you're looking at $250, $300 plus labor, $400 or $500. Whereas the metal roof is going to be somewhere around $2,000 to $3,500. I know some metal roof guys are going to say that's too cheap, but I don't. I do that, and it's, I can make $1,000 a day. Well, minus my help and fuel and things like that. I just don't have the nerve to charge anymore. So you're going to have to, your metal roof is going to last, you still have some maintenance around vents. Your metal roof is going to last 30, 40 years. I've got some metal roofs that I've done that are 32 down in Texas and Florida before I got here to northwest corner of Arkansas. So in that 30 or 40 year period, you're gonna seal your Cool Seal roof's going to cost you $250 to $500 every 3 years. So let's say 30 years paying, you're comparing it to a 30-year metal roof. You've done it 10 times, and the price is going to go up. 10 times 300, that's $3,000. And it will not be the same price 10 years later. It'll be more. So you're looking at $3,500 is going to cost you in constant labor and whatever. Usually you'll let it go until you get a leak, and then you got damage on the inside, so stain sealing at best, and whatever it costs to fix that. So you're going to spend that amount of money in the first 10 years. In the 30-year period, you're going to spend 3 times as much, probably more than that, because the cost of the Cool Seal or elastomeric, white elastomeric roof coating is going to go up just like everything. So I'm going to say in a 30-year period, you can spend $10,000 to $15,000 on sealing up that roof, plus whatever damage is on the inside. A metal roof, you're going to have the upfront cost right now around it'll cost you for the materials around $2,200 for a single wide, maybe less, and your maintenance is going to be less than. You want to pay somebody $100, that'd be, you could do it yourself, but say you pay somebody $100 and then after a period of time, every 3 years or so, same time you would have to be coating, you're saving a ton of money. And the metal roof in 40 years is still going to be there. It's still going to be there. So Cool Seal versus, I understand the use of sealant on a metal roof of a mobile home. I understand. I will understand the budget. You're going to do what you can as you can afford it. So there's your math. In the long haul, you're way ahead to do a metal roof. As regards the exterior metal, vinyl, T111 or Hardy board, my viewpoints toward those, there's some really nice looking metal siding that goes up and down on houses now. It's real expensive. And there is lap siding, sort of like vinyl siding that is metal, very expensive. It has a tendency to chip and scratch. Of course, it fades, but it lasts a long, long time. It's very durable. So you got double the cost, and it will fade. That is, you're going to pay more for it. Now, when it comes to vinyl siding, it's probably the least expensive.
Farmington, Missouri, is that within our?
I don't know where Farmington, Missouri is. So when it comes to vinyl siding, you can actually put it right on the old metal siding of a mobile home. You can put vinyl siding on just about anything. And now I've seen some really ugly houses get covered up with vinyl siding. As a matter of fact, I saw one that was a log cabin that it was inside and they put vinyl siding over it. So when it comes to vinyl siding, it's probably the least expensive as far as labor and cost. There are problems with vinyl siding. You cannot mess with it when it's cold because it will crack and bust. I did one job where we had to take the vinyl siding inside the house because it was right at 5 degrees outside. Wind chill was massive and it was cracking. So I had to keep the material warm as I could till I hand out a piece at a time, and we put that up. Boy, it was cold. 5 hours away, yeah. So what is it they want done?
They're asking about the duct in their double wide. They are not getting heat or air conditioning in the master bedroom.
You can take a hand mirror, the kind that you would look at your face with if you're doing your makeup, or a rectangular one, like so, and take a flashlight on one end of the ductwork. So that ductwork runs from one end to the other about 4 or 5 feet from the outside, all the way from one end to the other. So take out a vent on one end of the house, and then take a vent further away, put a light down in there, and then stick your hand mirror on the other. Now you can also take the hand mirror, put it in at an angle, shine light, and you can look down that ductwork both ways. And you can see what's in there. But I would suggest one of the things you need to look at is the crossover ductwork that goes from directly underneath your central heat and air over to the other side. Generally, that's flexible ductwork, and animals have, in the name of getting warm or cold in the summertime, they lay on top of it, squash it down flat, and or dig into it. And you would have heat or air conditioning underneath your house. That's a classic. It's not saying that's what your problem is, but that's a classic one. What I have done is found porn collections inside the ductwork. I found dead animals inside the ductwork that long died. I had this lady raised French bulldogs, and she had the room all kept totally where she could wash it down. It was pretty clean. But the dogs were pissing down the ductwork grill, and it rotted right through the aluminum ductwork. And it's amazing what a dog peeing on something could do. I went to an air conditioning job. They said their air conditioner wasn't working. Actually, I sent this guy 7 foot tall working for me at the time out to look at it. He says, "Hey, Phil, you got to come over and look at this." Their Great Dane had pissed on the condensing unit so much that it was no aluminum left. It was just copper lines. So I've seen a monkey take the cover off and poop in there. I can go on. There's some pretty strange. I've seen possums in there. I've seen people just a lot of trash, uh, sweeping dirt in there till it's 4 inches. They barely get any air. So yes, there's any number of things. I'm not saying that any of those things is what your problem is. What I suggest is if your master bedroom is all the way to the end of the house, a double wide or any single wide mobile home has this unique problem. And in a house, what you do is you take a larger ductwork, say 14-inch, and you go and you keep it as further away you get from the main source of your central heat. The further away you get smaller and smaller with ductwork, and that keeps, it's sort of like hydraulics, it keeps your air pressure higher or at the same amount at the further away it gets. So you reduce your ductwork. You're not doing that with your double wide or your single wide. It's the same size all the way. Now, how do you get the same pressure or better pressure to that far room? You got to close down vents, not shut them down all the way, but close them down so that most of the air conditioner or heat doesn't go to the first rooms on that side where the central heat is coming in. So you're going to close down vents. You're going to push more air to that far room. That could be your problem. So your floor vents have adjustments in them. So you just slowly push, more, close off those vents a little bit, all the way into your master bedroom. If it's at the end, usually it is, big room, and a bathroom off to the one side. You'll find that it'll push more air. A second thing to look, or I guess this would be the third thing to look at, is if you've installed or had somebody install new doors, they usually look at the doors and say, "My goodness, this door is 2 inches off the ground. What are they thinking?" So they put a new door in, it goes all the way down to the carpet. The reason that the doorways are up 2 inches, and sometimes you see vents in the door, is because that's where your return air is. It pulls the air back out of that room to recirculate it and push it. So if you have that door all the way to the floor, it cannot push any more air in, whether cold or hot, because it's not returning. It's like filling up a balloon that's solid. It's not going to push any more air in. So there's your 4 things: the crossover ductwork, something in the vent, closing down your vents a little at a time, and make sure you got return air. That would be underneath. There is no ductwork like in a house where you got a duct that pulls return air out of that room. It's going to come underneath the door back to the unit, and then either make it a little bit colder or a little bit warmer depending on the season. So there's your 4 things. That's what I suggest. That's what I've seen over and over. But look in there. Sometimes the ductwork gets pulled away. I don't know how old your house is, but the older houses, animals get in there and tear up the ductwork. Everybody that has a mobile home, one of the things you need to do, even if it's new, is you take your floor vent out, and the ductwork is either fiberglass or metal, rectangular, probably 14, 16 inches wide, 6 inches deep. But it hangs down from the floor joist, so it's up against the floor joist. Floor joist anywhere from 5.5 inches to 7.5 inches thick. So you got to have a little bit of ductwork going up to your floor vent, going through your floor. Guess what? That's usually installed really sloppy. So here's what I'm telling you: new house or older house, get some foil tape. Even if you have to, duct tape, because duct tape won't last. I don't recommend it. But foil tape, reach in there and seal up all those edges where that connects to the ductwork and connects to the floor. You're going to find that there's cracks that is pushing out heat and air conditioning that should be in your room, not underneath the house. Or it's going to bring in cold air in the wintertime and hotter air in the summertime. Yeah, so look inside the ductwork first, but the biggest thing is going to be the closing down the vents and push that air toward because it does not have the smaller and smaller ductwork further and further it goes away from the central air. That's probably your problem. Somebody, before your master bedroom, has got their vent wide open, and then maybe wide open in the living room. So all the heat and air goes into first rooms, which the central heat and air will be somewhere near your living room generally, or in the kitchen that's connected to the living room. It's one of the neat things about double wides is they have lots of room in the kitchen and the living room, massive amount of room. Yeah.
Especially if you cook.
I've seen some fantastic things done with double wides. So we were talking about siding. Vinyl siding is probably one of the cheaper ways. It's not necessarily long haul the best. The reason I have questions about that or have doubts about it being the best is because if a hailstorm comes along, it knocks holes in that siding. Yeah, the rocks from a lawnmower gets kicked up and makes a hole in that siding. The profiles, there's a whole lot of different shapes of vinyl siding, and even if it's 3.5 Dutch lap, not necessarily easy to find. And guess what? That sun faded that color, and you're trying to match the faded color. If it's on, you have choices. But anyway, that's another discussion on how to repair vinyl siding. I can talk about that, but it has its issues. You can also do vinyl siding that is insulated, and that is really neat. That makes a lot of improvement on a conventional built home and a lot of improvement on a mobile home. A massive amount of difference, but it's expensive. The most fun and the most massive impact that I have seen is they make a vinyl siding that's shaped like log cabin, and it's insulated. Man, it just looks like a Lincoln log, and it's really neat. I don't know if I like the dark brown, but they have a gray and then a cedar look available. I think the name of the company is Monticello or something like that. I've done several, and man, that's really impressive. And I've done it on mobile homes, and it just makes it look like a little toy log cabin. And it's expensive, but it does make a big difference when it comes to heat and air conditioning. Now, T111. T111's been around for a long time, at least 40, 50 years. 40 years, I'm sure of. You can do cedar or you can do pine. You can have really thin and you can have really thick. So you have a lot of different choices when it comes to the expense.